Welcome to the NCO Journal's Sergeant's Time podcast, a new series featuring informal conversations with leaders at all levels, where you'll have the unique chance to learn what makes them tick, what their leadership styles are, and what inspires them. I'm your host, Chago Zapata, managing editor of the NCO Journal. With us is Sergeant First Class Osvaldo Equite, NCOSE of the NCO Journal, and Command Sergeant Major Jason Porras, Army University CSM. Today we welcome Sergeant First Class Shane Burroughs to our podcast. Sergeant Burroughs, a native of Spring Lake, North Carolina, joined the Army in 2006 as a unit supply specialist. He currently serves as a recruiter with the St. Thomas Recruiting Station in the U.S. Virgin Islands and was recently selected as a 2023 Regular Army Recruiter of the Year. When I was doing a little background read on you and kind of learning a little bit more about you, I saw that you're from Spring Lake, North Carolina, but originally from Trinidad. Is that correct? Are you from Trinidad?
Yes. So I was born and raised Trinidad and Tobago, Sangre Grande. And it's like, a Caribbean environment. It's just it's a very different way of life, compared to like what we have now, as far as like the majority of the states. So it's, traditional island life, climbing coconut trees, dealing with like loss of power, and just having like limited resources and kind of making life work. And then, it's essentially transitioning into Spring Lake, North Carolina, as I grew up.
How old were you when you came to the States?
I started traveling back and forth when I was 5. Believe by the time I moved over here for good, it was about 9 years old.
And what was it like growing up in Spring Lake? It's right outside. What base is it?
Fort Liberty.
Fort Liberty. What was it like growing up there?
It was different. Initially, it was like a culture shock. So, I come from traditional island lifestyle to now being like around a lot of like military community. And we live next to Pope Air Force Base. So like I say at least 2 times within an hour, you just see like C-130s just flying over like the house. And that was like very different. But overall, it was, you could tell like that community was like very, like had a strong military pride. So, it kind of like allowed me to like just kind of fit in and kind of change my upbringing for a more positive way. But overall, it was a good environment growing up.
So do you think that had an influence with you joining the Army, Sergeant Burroughs?
I do. So my stepfather was a sergeant major at the 18th Airborne Corps. And, living with the sergeant major. But the thing is not knowing what a sergeant major was, or, when I was younger. And probably standing at parade rest, not knowing that it was parade rest, definitely kind of instilled like a sense of like discipline within me, and definitely influenced me to like join the Army because, I would see, my stepfather's accomplishments and I'll see like my parents' pictures in different duty stations. And, when I graduated, I was like, how do I get to these places? So I definitely think that, the first thing that came to my mom was like, maybe I should join the military and follow in their footsteps.
Let's switch it up a little bit. What is it that inspires you?
I say 3 driving things. So for me, my parents. My parents are like my number one source of inspiration. I looked at, the path and the things that they had to do, like the challenges that they had to overcome, especially, moving from the States when they moved and, still being able to establish themselves as adults and then provide for me as their child. Definitely my parents is one, like my main source of inspiration. However, and then also looking at the achievement of my peers, I know they say like, you shouldn't compare yourself to anyone, but for me, like I'm motivated to see my peers doing well. So it also kind of puts like a sense of drive in me to get after it. Cause I feel like, it's not necessarily about keeping up. But it's just about the fact of, if you're around a group of winners, you kind of also feel inclined to like want to win as well or want to succeed as well. And now currently being a recruiter, for me now it's my future soldiers. So, my future soldiers, like all of them are go-getters. So I see all the different things and the family, backgrounds that they come from and how they, want to aspire different goals in the military. So they continuously like, I see like the younger version of myself and I'm like, you know what? It's like inspiration every single day over and over.
I obviously we're Facebook friends and you worked for me in the past and I follow both of your Facebook pages, but primarily is it Army Recruiter Buroughs or whatever it is. One thing I notice is everybody that you put in, not everybody, but I'd say a large population of soldiers that you put in from the Virgin Islands, you do a good job of following up on them when they come back after basic training, and you have them in their uniform, standing amongst other people. Is that something they all volunteer to do to come back, or what's that dynamic like?
So, initially it was something that I was like, okay, let me find a way to highlight the military on a positive note while still highlighting the individual and at the same time like paying, honor to that family. So I was like, hey, look, if you're ever back in the area, yes, I need you all to bring your uniform so I can, proudly take it to all the places that you used to be a part of and tell, what is now your Army story. And then it kind of went, I guess you could say it quote unquote went viral. And now everybody's like, whether they're my soldiers or not, they hit me up and they're like, hey, I'm coming back to the Virgin Islands. Like, do you have anything that you want me to be a part of or, would like to do? And I'm like, yeah, look, like, let's get it. Let's get out there in the community. Let's interact. Let's go to the schools. Let's do different things. And so, now it's like a thing. They know that when they're back in the area, we're going to meet up and we're going to get involved during the time that they're here.
What is it like to be a part of that community? Because it seems like they've welcomed you with open arms, based off of how you've been there. What is that community like? What's their perception of the United States military and Army specifically?
So this, like being here is, I'll say one of the Army's most unique recruiting experiences. Like, stateside is very different. But you're talking about a small, very small like area where everyone kind of knows everyone. So it's essentially it's very family oriented. So for me, coming in and being a part of the community, telling my Army story, and it's like, hey, I'm also from the islands. They welcomed me, and it was like sense of like being part of the family. But overall, it's a very small dynamic. Everyone supports each other. Everyone is here, highlighting each other's accomplishments, day to day activity. Like there's not a place where you can go and you can't run into somebody that either you saw on Facebook or you saw on, some type of social media post or anything happens and somebody doesn't know about it. So overall, it's just it's a unique way of life down here because you won't get that stateside where everybody's kind of spread out. But overall, it's very family oriented down here at St. Thomas.
It sounds like pride is a recurring theme. A family, a sense of belonging is something that's comes naturally down there. But what are some of your challenges that you face down there?
The challenges would definitely have to be, the thing is, I would say to a point, everyone, there's a high percentage of the population that's interested in military service. The challenges as a recruiter that I find is that just common things that okay, cool, somebody may not have the highest aptitude in order to pass and join, so it's like I have to be like, okay, I give 110% for anybody that I work with. I don't quit on anyone. And they'll tell you they'll be like, man, you never give up. I'm like, no, you say you want my help, I'm going to give you my help. And if you feel like too much of my help is my help, then that's what I'm going to give you because I'm not going to give you halfway help. So for me, it's about, definitely putting the time, and it's not a challenge per se, but it is about me dedicating my time to make sure that that person is able to be able to pass the ASVAB, to be able to make sure that they go through the medical process and essentially enlist. So it's a tedious process, not necessarily a challenge, but I would say that maybe other branches may not be up for that, or maybe another recruiter may not be up for that. But that's for me. That's how I like to operate.
So it's more than just screening them and saying you don't meet the entrance requirements. When you find out what that obstacle is, you sit down with that potential future soldier and you come up with a plan on how they can meet those entrance requirements and stick with them until they're accepted. Is what it sounds like. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, that's very accurate because I've had applicants where some applicants, you meet them, they walk in and they're ready to go, like they have no issues, and it could be like within a 2 to 3 week period that they pass the test. Next thing you know, they go down, they do the physical, and then they enlist. And I've had some that have life challenges and different things going on, and it takes them months. Or I think the longest person that I've worked with probably took that person about a year. But even within that year, I don't give up on anyone. Like if it takes me following up with that person every single month or multiple times, throughout the month. That's what I do to make it happen. So, my thing is I want to see everybody succeed.
This attitude of never giving up, not quitting, overcoming obstacles. When did you first notice that in you? And maybe was there somebody that influenced that in your life?
I would say that probably was, instilled within me with definitely some of my mentors throughout my career. And I've had a lot of mentors, Sergeant Major Portis being one of them. But I'll reference three mentors specifically, and then it's in reference of like the comfort zone or those people not giving up on me, right? So when I joined the Army, I was a private, and I had a battalion S4 NCO. He was 40 years old at the time. I was 21 years old. He was very in shape, and he ran a 12-minute 2 mile. And he used to take us on these morning runs for PT. And he had a thing that if anybody fell out of the run or fell behind him, he would take us to the gym. He'd put everybody on the treadmill. He'd stand right beside you and push the buttons until you went faster. So the fact that when at that point, him not giving up on us, kind of instilled it in my mind. And down, fast forwarding to where I met, Sergeant Major Portis, I would say when I was working with Sergeant Major Portis, right, me personally, I feel like I'm a very introverted person. But I've always been into like working out, physical fitness. And I think somewhere along the line, Sergeant Major Portis got caught wind of that. He's like, hey, look, I want him to be like the remedial PT NCO, for the battalion. And this is what's going to happen. And I'm like, got it, Sergeant Major. So, I feel like the fact that he saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself to impact on a larger scale and not giving up on me definitely helped me kind of get out of my comfort zone, because I have this saying, there's no progress in the comfort zone, and able to push me to becoming who I am today. So, and then, shout out to the Sergeant Major. I appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you, Sergeant Burroughs.
It's funny you talk about being introverted. I was a recruiter myself, by the way, from 1999 to 2002. I was out there beating the streets back during 9/11, and during 9/11, actually, I was at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School recruiting kids, talking to kids at the school at the time. But anyway, I was an introvert before I became a recruiter, and then after I left recruiting duty, I was an extrovert. It was one of these things that this kind of career, this kind of job, changes you. What kind of changes have you seen in yourself? Since you became a recruiter.
I'll definitely say I'm more of a people person. At some points, I'm still introverted, but things I've always been big on volunteer service, even though I became a recruiter, even before I became a recruiter. But I feel like now it's like being able to obviously be a recruiter and being involved with the community. I find myself doing more volunteer service. It's because not only do I want to contribute my time to the community, but I also want to be a positive role model to the young males and females that are interested in joining. So that's one of the things that I saw that changed within me. I'm more vocal, more social, definitely more receptive to understand that not everybody is the same, because like I said, everybody has a different story as to why they're joining and that process to get them to join. So to being able to think outside of the box and find new ways to cater to that individual, so my thought process is definitely broadened as well.
Your involvement with the community, it goes hand in hand with recruiting. And I think having that tie, that's not just something that you do because you have to, because you're a recruiter and you want to be involved, but because you honestly would like to be a part, like to be a volunteer and help. And you've been doing it before even going out there on recruiting duty. I think it all ties together. I think being out there and having people see you be honest and do all these positive things, it all leads to I would say it probably leads to your success as a recruiter, because people see you and I want my kid to be like that. If parents see you doing things that out there for the community, they look at you and they say, I want my kids to be a part of that, to be somebody like that. So they're much more likely to to kind of to push their kids to do something that matches, you know, somebody that they respect. So I'm just throwing that out there. I think you're in a unique opportunity and in a unique place where it's a small community where it's not, you're like you said, it's not a big, you don't have a lot of windshield time going to take, you know, going to see somebody or going to interview somebody. You're all right there close by, and it's it's a unique opportunity, I would say.
And you know, the thing with that is you know, you mentioned like someone being like a role model, right? So for me, you know, like, okay, so one, you know, being in the military, obviously, you know, being an NCO and being a professional, I like to, you know, throughout my years, I like to like embody the total soldier concept. So obviously, you know, you take the total soldier concept for what would be like, you know, in an operational unit per se, and then you go into like the world of recruiting. It's okay, how are you going to present yourself as, you know, this well-rounded Army individual to inspire somebody else? You know, although I may not have kids of my own, I work with a lot of parents. And, you know, one of the things I have to always remind myself, I was like, you know, I make it a point that wherever I go, whatever it is I'm doing, especially like when I'm in a school involved with, you know, kids who I've never met before, I'm like, I make it a point to be like, okay, I want to be the recruiter that if I had a kid, that I want my kid to be around this positive individual, right? And you know, when nobody's around per se, because you know, I don't want to go in there and it's just like, oh yeah, I'm just kind of doing whatever. Like, no, you got to be a positive role model. You got to be a professional. You got to be on point. You still got to represent the Army at the end of the day. So for me, that whole thing just kind of like comes down to being like that total soldier concept.
So, Burroughs, let me change it just slightly. So, you mentioned having an impact on these young future soldiers, which is obviously going to help the Army in years to come with our, you know, lethality and being able to train soldiers and defend the United States of America. My question is, I think what you do, you inspire deeper than that. Obviously, being Recruiter of the Year. My question is, how can you inspire other recruiters? The Army currently has a recruiting issue. We're not able to meet our mission. And from what I understand, you just put in your packet to reclassify from supply specialist to become a recruiter, and you're going to go to the station commander course. So you volunteered to sign up for a very difficult job during a very difficult time. And you think you can make a difference even when you depart Virgin Islands and go to your next duty station as a station commander. How do you inspire those future recruiters who maybe are coming out there as DA selects, or maybe they're inspired to put in a reclassification packet? How do you impact that audience?
You know, I would definitely start say, you know, obviously it kind of goes with, you know, like a little bit of advice per se. So you know, to inspire them, but to also kind of like just give them advice and say like, hey, this is the environment that you're coming into. These are, you know, this is our current situation as far as like, you know, the importance of our job. And just to kind of remember like, hey, look, you know, you have a very significant role within the Army right now, and obviously within your immediate organization. Some of my inspiration / advice would be, hey, one, leave your office, right? You know, being the face of the Army, like to get out there and interact, one, you have to leave the office. At some point, I feel like I spend probably 80% of my time outside of the office. The other thing too is to definitely like tap into your network, tap into the colleges, the ROTC, the community programs, be a part of the community, and you know, overall. And my thing is, it's like have a presence, but also be present. And you know, I'll repeat that again: have a presence, but also be present. So you know, it's one thing for somebody to know who you are, and then it's another thing for them to be like, "Hey, I see this person every day, or I know what this person looks like, or I can go interact with this person." And you know, the next thing is it's kind of like, you know, make sure that we're reaching out, we're networking in all different areas. So you know, like social media, we talked about that, making sure that the social media presence is very very strong, and just making sure that, you know, everybody within the community knows, like, you know, who we are and what we represent overall.
Why is it that you were selected as the recruiter of the year for the Army?
No, it was a very detailed process. So, you know, some people some people, if for that's a very good question. I'm glad that you asked, right? So, because some people may think like, oh, he just put in the most amount of people. Like, no, definitely not. Um, so I did put in this past year. I enlisted 26 future soldiers, and now the way that the criteria to be NCO of the year. So since I'm an active duty recruiter, 50% of the amount of people that I enlisted had to be active as well. So that's like my entry level into even being considered. So 26 of those people, well, at least 13 of them were active. Oh, sorry, yeah, were active duty. And then the next thing is being able to compete at a board from the battalion to the brigade, and then making it to USAREC. So there was initially like a battalion quarter board, which advanced to a brigade quarter board, a brigade annual, and then making it to USAREC. So there was a lot of pressure. I competed against a lot of great NCOs, which really kept me on my toes. But overall, it was a very unique experience. But that's the process overall.
So when you're interacting and competing against those fellow recruiters from all over the country, I'm sure you guys all shared stories, the challenges at different locations, because duty location can matter. If you're in the Midwest, some of those guys don't have the tight-knit community that you have where you can go out and, engage, a large population right there. They're in a government vehicle driving 2 to 3 hours to interview with one family, and then they're driving back across to do the same thing. And then there's other places where, the average median income for a family, such as, California or something like that, they make a lot more money than the Army's competitive entry pay. What did they share with you as far as their experiences and challenges, and what's kind of unique to specific location and what's common to all?
So yeah, some of I say the challenges are going to be the same across the board. You're trying to find that qualified applicant, the one who's able to pass the ASVAB with have a high aptitude in general, being able to get through the medical process, and then essentially listen. So that's a common challenge that I feel like recruiters across the U.S. Share. That, and then we look at, okay, well, what is working in one area versus what's not working in one area. And I'll say, for me, down here where I'm in a smaller area and I'm able to do like a lot of community activities for other people who are not being able to drive 10 minutes towards their audience. I feel like social media is a big thing. They're able to reach out to people on a larger scale and connect with a person on, either halfway across the state, halfway across the county, country, whatever it may be. So those things definitely kind of bring us in. And, overall, we're just going to we all recognize like, hey, this is what's at stake. So, we share a lot of back and forth to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing to be successful. And, being able to learn different ways to do different things, whether it's class presentations, social media presentations, the Future Soldier Referral Program. That's a big one where we tap into like our internal network of, from service members that are already in and they provide referrals. That's one of the big driving forces right now. And they actually, get like promotion points so they can get promoted in rank through that program. So utilizing all of the networks, internal and external, it's all, kind of brings it all together.
Hey, since you got the mics on, Burroughs, I want to give you an opportunity. So I know you've sat down with a lot of applicants wanting to join the military, and you've sat around with a bunch of parents also. What are some common questions they ask you, fears, worries, questions that they have that maybe you can reach a large audience right now and answer some of those questions? What are parents concerned about? What are applicants concerned about? And how do you answer those questions and help them decide that the military is the right path for them?
So one of the common things, I feel, it's the perception. They see a person in uniform, they associate with whatever may be going on within the world or whatever they saw in the movie, and they assume that every person in uniform, is essentially like, we're going to say, a war fighter. So for me, it's taking that time to educate that person that say, hey, we have 150 different opportunities on active duty, 120 different opportunities, in the Army Reserve. And, we all don't do the same thing. And that's also like educating the parents as well, because the parents, may not know that. Or if you're talking about like the benefits, it's like, hey, you do know that the the Army can, pay for your way through college, and we offer 30 days paid leave and, annually, and, all of these different benefits and opportunities, medical care, dental care, worldwide travel, all of these different things. You have a lot of family members or even students that don't know all of these things. So to try to put it out, or the fact that, the Army itself is one of the only branches that allows the applicant during the enlistment process to select their job is a very big thing. For me, if I was, Private Burroughs or applicant Burroughs coming in, I would want to know what it is that I'm going to do before I sign up for it, and how long I'm going to do it, and possibly where I'm going to do it, and any incentives that come with it. The Army is the perfect choice compared to, our competitors. We offer that information up front. So those are just some of the key things that I highlight, innovate on, and definitely our the promotion program as well. So, for instance, if you had a high school junior, senior, let's just say high school senior, and they had 2 years of ROTC, they could be promoted to an E2. If you had 3 to 4 years of JROTC, they could be promoted to an E3. Obviously, if a person has a 4-year degree, they could come in as a specialist, or they can, possibly take the officer route upon selection. So all of these things are just a constant reminder of what we have to offer.
I'll tell you, when I joined, I was looking at the benefits and everything, because I had a newborn baby, so I was looking at stability for my life and wanting to be part of a brotherhood, a family. So it was a pretty easy decision for me. I think I was a recruiter's dream. I walked right in and said, "Sign me up." But some people that have the questions or reservations, I think it's important that for everybody that wears a uniform, when they have interaction with the parents, to kind of share your Army story, tell, the good and the bad. Not everything's great, but in the grand scheme of things, I think our organization is phenomenal.
So I guess with the this opportunity that you have here to reach a bigger audience, the NCO Corps, what would you say? How can the NCO Corps help recruiting efforts out there? Like, what advice would you give them?
Well, one, there's two. So previously I mentioned the featured soldier or the Army's referral program. So, since, we are, working hard to meet our total enlistments annually, I would say, if you're a service member and, you may know somebody back in your hometown or wherever it may be, or it's close to your current base, definitely contact a recruiter, or first, try to contact that individual, be like, "Hey, I have a referral." There's even a link that they can find, through the Army websites, and provide that information to provide, that person to communicate with the recruiter, to essentially, kind of build more of the force per se. So there's that. And then the other thing too is, right now, recruiting command as a whole, I believe that they're currently looking for about 800 new qualified, motivated NCOs. And I say motivated because, you have to be motivated to do this job, right? You have to come in and, willing to change somebody's life, willing to make a positive impact. And I think that's part of what drives success. It's also based off of that personal, who that person is per se. So, if you can't come in and, not be driven, or, not be motivated, or not willing to do X, Y, Z, like, hey, come in, understand the importance of your job, the impact of your job, and how you can contribute to the success of someone else by paying it forward.
Hey, I'm glad you mentioned that, Sergeant Burroughs. So you're right. I think they are looking for between 600 to 800 new recruiters, and there's a big push for them, and some of them are getting their orders notification right now. What do you tell those guys? How do you get them excited about their job? I know you're saying they have to come in motivated and want to do a job. Some of them are excited about it already as soon as they came out on orders. Some of them didn't quite want the assignment that they got, but they're going to go be a recruiter. So how do you tell them it's, not only going to be okay, but it's going to be one of the most rewarding assignments of their career?
Indeed. I feel like as a leader, like one of the main things that we have to do is to be able to adapt. Because, being able to adapt as a leader, I feel like that's one of the most critical tasks throughout anybody's military career. Things are always going to change. So, if I was that NCO and next thing bam, I came down on recruiting orders, or I volunteered for it, I would say, keep an open mind. Definitely, come in and, understand the importance, because I believe the way it is now, if a person is a sergeant E5, upon graduating the art course, they'll be promoted to a staff sergeant. And for a staff sergeant who's currently either serving as a DA selected recruiter, if they enlist 24, they have 24 enlistments within a 12-month period, I believe they get to promoted to sergeant first class. So, it could be that one thing that can set your career off. When I came into recruiting, I was DA selected. So, I was actually happy for the opportunity. Like, man, I get to get out here and interact with the community. I didn't see it as a negative thing. For me, I was like, you know what? I'm about to put my best foot forward and get out here and interact and change lives. So that was one of the main things that I stayed with and continue to stay with.
Kind of switching things back to one of the things that kind of came up earlier about some of the struggles that the Army's having with recruiting. From your perspective, can you talk about that? As far as how the Army, having difficulty meeting its mission, how is that affecting you and maybe some of your friends out there in recruiting, and as recruiters?
I would say, I say that it affects everybody in a different way. But like I tell anyone, I believe that there's no I in team. In order to be successful in recruiting, I feel like the whole team has to contribute. So now if you have like an office, I don't know, it has 3 or 4 people, and only, 1 or 2 of those individuals are the person that's putting in that effort, then that could create, like other stress within the office. If 1 person or 2 people is doing all the work. And at the same time, but from what I've seen in recruiting is more successful when everyone kind of does their part. Everyone contributes to the overall mission. So you're talking about everybody getting out there, being in the community, being involved, contacting people, following up with people, having social media interactions, just trying to find different and unique ways to interact with people. It's more effective if you had everyone contributing their part. And I'm not saying like everybody has to be at 100%, that in a perfect world, that'll be the case. But if everybody came out there and put more than 60% effort, I feel like definitely we would definitely be where we are. But, it's just a matter of taking the time to make sure that we're all on the same page.
As I said before, I spent 3 years back in 20 something years ago. Some of those people that I recruited, I'm still in touch with, I occasional emails, that kind of thing. But it's amazing the kind of impact that you have on another person's life and how it becomes a lifelong thing for some of them, for some of us, because if you stay involved as a recruiter in their career, and I mean, it doesn't always just end right after you put them in, as we called it back then. We put them in boots. Once we put them in boots, the process goes on, because you don't just forget about them and move on. They become, just like you said, you don't have any kids, but in a way you can almost claim these kids you're putting in the Army are your kids, because that's kind of the way I saw mine too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, for me, it doesn't end with the enlistment process, and like Sergeant Major Porter says, like they come back to the community and they're like, hey, are you doing X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, yeah, like let's get after it. And I've had recently doing this for 4 years. Recently, I had a few of the PV2s that I enlisted recently achieved the rank of being non-commissioned officers. So watching them like take that next level for me was just like, man, like it meant the world. And having a few of them to be like, hey, would you mind being my mentor? A few of them getting married, and they're like, hey, would you like to come to my wedding? And I'm like, man, this is kind of crazy, because it's not a cut and dry process. You change somebody's life. It's not like, hey, thank you, goodbye. Like, that's not it. At least not like that for me. I like to still be professional, but very interpersonal, because for me it's meaningful as to how we connected, how we we grew to know each other. Yes, you did join the Army, but it's a lifelong friendship, or just a lifelong communication, throughout the process.
I think that's awesome, Sergeant Burroughs. I didn't do the math, but you're right. 4 years, these guys are starting to get promoted to sergeant, and some of the fast trackers, maybe by the time you're done, they'll be staff sergeants. That's got to be a great feeling being able to see them achieve success in a relatively short amount of time. That's got to be another pro for being a recruiter, getting to see that impact that you have and seeing people do well and promote and, re-enlist at this point. There's people that sign 3-year enlistments that are re-enlisting. So I think that's great. And that's got to be giving recruiters job satisfaction. So I'm glad you shared that story with us.
Yeah, no problem, Sergeant Major. Yeah, definitely a highlight when it happened.
Off of recruiting topic, I'm going to ask this question, Chago, because you've been successful and you're Sergeant First Class and Recruiter of the Year. What would present day you give newly promoted Sergeant Burroughs back in the day? Like if you could give advice to yourself as a brand new Sergeant E5, which is your population of the people you put in your first couple months in recruiting, what advice do you give that population?
Take advantage of every opportunity that's presented to you, regardless of if you feel like you're up for the challenge, if you feel like you don't have like any knowledge or things like that. Because I reference my interaction with you, Sergeant Major. So the thing is as leaders or as a senior leader, most like a senior leader is going to see the potential in a junior leader, even though they don't see it in themselves. So so when an opportunity presents itself as a junior leader, that junior leader may be thinking like, oh man, I don't know if I can handle this. I'm not sure if I'm ready for this. But the thing is, whoever presented that opportunity saw that potential in that person. So if I was that person having, opportunities presented to me, I would take every opportunity that is handed to me because one, somebody sees potential in you, and maybe they're trying to mentor you and coach you to get to that next level. And things like that. So that'll definitely be one. Next thing I would say is, hey, don't overthink. A lot of it's like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. Truth is, I don't think that there's anything in life that any one person will ever be truly ready for. If we're talking military career experiences, maybe even to go off topic, maybe like marriage or something like that. These are things that you kind of just jump into and you make it work over a period of time. So don't overthink yourself. And the other thing too is I had to learn to ask for help. So I would not be currently where I am as a senior leader or even as the recruiter of the year if I didn't learn to ask for help because I don't know everything. I feel like there's a lot of leaders who don't know everything, but there's also having that pride as maybe even as a senior leader or as a junior leader. It's like there's things that we're not sure about, there's things that we're not trained on, or there's things that we don't even have certain experiences with, and it's like our pride will sit there and be like, okay, you know what, let me figure this out on my own. But maybe figuring it out on your own may not be always correct, and you could do it a lot better if you ask somebody for help. So for me, definitely would be ask somebody for help. And the next thing will be, the road isn't going to be perfect to success. Everybody has to quote unquote take a few L's in the process, right? Not everything is going to be a win. So, use the setbacks as a way to overcome and get to your next goal. So that would be the advice that I would give to younger version of Sergeant Burroughs or just that younger NCO in general.
I think that's great advice. All those are spot on. I think those are great. People should take that perspective with opportunities given to them.
And because my whole thing is, I know you asked about, kind of what led for me getting to this in my process. And as I was mentioning, like senior leaders seeing the potential. So when I first came to USAREC, it was always a personal goal of mine to attend a board. But the thing is, I was so busy and trying to make sure that I'm meeting the day-to-day mission. But I did express to my higher command, in this case would be my battalion sergeant major. I was like, hey, one of my goals is to attend the board. Like it was just to attend the board and get the experience and see how it works. It wasn't never to make it this high. But at some point, he was like, he reached out. He was like, hey, how's everything going and things like that. Just to do like a checkup. And then he was like, hey, you're going to the board. And, it wasn't a matter of saying, hey, are you ready? Are you prepared? Have you been studying? He's like, hey, no, you're going to the board. And my response was, Roger, Sergeant Major. So, if it wasn't for my Sergeant Major saying, hey, you're going to that board. And then from there, me kind of diverting my priorities of still being able to recruit and then being able to prepare for this board. Obviously, we're talking 4 boards later. I wouldn't be where I currently am now if it wasn't for those words or that direct statement of him saying, hey, you're going to the board. So I just want to say, shout out to my sergeant major, my battalion sergeant major.
Really appreciate you taking the time to join us, to give us so much and give the Army so much with your words and your input. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for more interesting guests and inspiring conversations right here at the NCO Journal. Submit your articles, get published. Don't forget to visit our webpage and follow us on social media. We'll see you next time on the Sergeant's Time Podcast.